My mother was a free spirit. She loved just getting in the car and driving and taking off, going wherever the wind would take her. She didn't mind getting lost either. It used to drive us mad, and we'd be in the car with her, and she would decide to take another way to get wherever she was going, way before GPS. And sometimes we would end someplace we didn't know where we were, she didn't know where we were, and we would just find our way back, and she would get so excited about things like that. She decided to move here to Texas from New Jersey. That's where I was raised, in 2010, the year after my father died. And I was really proud of her, because here she was at 80 years old. She had never lived on her own before. And after we closed down the house, got it all sold, I flew back here to Texas, and she decided to take Amtrak and take that train trip from New Jersey here to Texas. She actually arrived here in Dallas on Veterans Day, and there was a parade happening, and she was just so convinced the parade was for her, to welcome her to town. So she got an apartment for the very first time in life and lived alone and was very excited. She said, geez, I've never been able to just decorate a place for me and be able to make it what I want to make it and not have to think about anybody else in this whole arrangement. So she enjoyed that and settled in. I took her to the Plano Senior Center, and she was quite fascinated there, because she felt what she called the geriatrics. Folks her age, she didn't think she was one of them. She said, I think these geriatrics are pretty nice people, and I'm going to enjoy coming here. So she settled into the senior center, really built a life here, found a home church, and made a life here in Texas after about 50 plus years in New Jersey. I really was very, very proud of her. On August 10, gosh, that anniversary's coming up, 2015, I got a call from my mother's doctor saying, we've dialed 911. It looks like your mother is presenting like she's having a stroke. And I tried to take all that in that moment, and I immediately got in the car after hanging up the phone and drove to Medical City, Plano. I got to the ER, and they took me back to the bed she was in, and she looked at me as if I were familiar, but she didn't know my name. I said, hi, Mom, and her eyes kind of brightened, and she said, I remember you. You're that nice lady that always helps people when they need something. And then she considered me a little bit more, and she said, I think you're married to that young man who's really nice too. He's always very, very helpful. So I realized in that moment she didn't know who I was. I asked her if she knew my name. She said, no, I don't. I'm sorry. She had a very mild stroke. And so in about 3 or 4 days, she knew my name. She knew that her husband was no longer living. She knew my brother's name, my sister's child, Danielle. She remembered her name. She remembered where she lived. So her memory came back pretty quickly. And the only thing that really persisted was that she could not swallow anymore. So she had to start speech pathology, and they ended up having to give her a feeding tube. So watching all of this, knowing the woman she was and the free spirit that she really was quite disconcerting for me. But I'm one of those people who kind of picks up. I can knuckle through anything. And so I just did the good daughter thing. I assisted with as much as I could with whatever care she needed and support she needed while she was in the hospital. And within a few days, probably about 10 days, she was in a rehab center in Plano. And she started physical therapy, speech therapy. They figured she was going to be on the feeding tube for a while until she could learn to swallow again. She was there for about 2 days. And during that time, we were talking about my niece because she was due to get married in 2 months. And we thought she was going to be able to make that trip and we were going to fly up to New Jersey for the wedding, but it was looking like that wasn't going to happen. So we were making all kinds of plans about making some videos to send to her, getting a gift box together that we could send to help celebrate her wedding. 3 days after my mother was there in rehab, I got another phone call about 6 a.m. The woman on the phone said, "We're rushing your mother back to the hospital. She's non-responsive." Again, I hung up the phone and got into the car and drove up to Medical City, Plano. This time I got into the emergency room. Her left side is flaccid. Her eyes were pointed in one direction. She didn't follow or track me around the room. If I moved to the side of the bed where she was looking, kind of looking, her eyes didn't really register. They were oddly dilated. I can't really describe what that was. I said, "Hello, Mom." There was no response. She could not speak. So they took her up to the ICU to further evaluate her. My mother stayed in ICU probably for about 4 days. And if any of you have ever visited the ICU, you know what that's like. It's not a peaceful place. There's always things going on. There are monitors beeping, everything, the tubes, all kinds of technology everywhere. I slept in her room every night. I stayed with her during the day. My husband stayed at home and held down the fort. We were even refinancing during that time, and bless his heart, he took care of all of that so that I could be present with my mother. Those 4 days up in ICU, I started to lose it because you're not getting any sleep. Somebody was coming in the room probably about every hour or so to check something. And so about the 4th day, the nurses sent me home and they said, "You've got to go or else we're going to be opening up a bed for you in the next room." I was crying uncontrollably, tired in mind, body, spirit, and heart. I went home that night and they said, "Just get a good night's rest and come back when you feel a little bit better." I slept about 12 hours that night. And the following morning, when I finally got myself together to head back up to the hospital, I was driving up Coit Road into Plano. And I thought, I don't know how much longer I can do this. Yes, I wanted to be there for my mother, but I wasn't finding any joy in life anymore. I couldn't see any reason why I would want to get up. Every single day was hard. And hard's probably not the word for it. So as I'm driving up the road, I just said out loud, how do I do this? How do I have a reason to want to get up every day and do this again? How do I shepherd my mother through this? Because I don't know how long we're going to be on this road. I don't know. And right now, I'm feeling like I'm not going to get through the next hour. So it was a question and a prayer in the same moment. Question and a prayer. And I just remained silent after that as I'm driving. And all of a sudden I hear, "Sing. Sing." And I do sing. But I'm thinking, how is that an answer to what I'm dealing with? Sing. So I let it go, because by now in my life, I know that when I hear something like that I believe is from Spirit, that there is an answer there for me, that it is definitely an answer to a prayer. Because every time I hear a message from Spirit, it doesn't seem to make rational sense. Because if it were rational, I could have figured that out. I would have known to just sing. I mean, sing the whom, sing what? I don't know. So I just got quiet, and as I got to my mother's room, she had now, by then, been moved to a regular room. And I sat down with her and appraised her. There's nothing I can do for her, really. So there were times when I would brush her hair, and I would see the look on her face relax, because she just loved the feel of the brush in her hair. I would rub her hands, her feet, her ankles, and just be with her. And in a moment, I remembered to sing. And I started to sing to her. I sang whatever I knew. I sang hymns that I knew that she might remember. I sang songs that I loved. And I sang for hours by her bedside, holding her, rubbing her hands, brushing her hair. I sang for hours. And I don't know if I was singing for her or if I was singing for me. But I just sang because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't get any other messages. Nothing said, sing this song, sing that song, stop singing here. Nothing, just to sing. And I did sing for hours. And I believe somewhere in my heart that she heard me and that she felt me. Certainly, other people in the hospital heard, because nurses would come in and they would say, "Oh my gosh, thank you. Because your song allowed me to go through this day more peacefully, to do my job more fully, to do it better." Doctors said the same thing. Visitors, other visitors seeing their loved ones would stop in and say thank you. And so maybe I was singing for a lot of people that day. Maybe I wasn't the only one with a prayer asking for peace during this time that I just felt was untenable. What am I going to do with this? Around September 5 or 6, I knew that my mother was changing and that things were not getting better. She was less responsive. She wasn't even responding when I brushed her hair. She didn't move her right side at all. Every once in a while, usually when my husband came in the room, she would track him across the room. And I thought, I'm sitting here all day long. I can't. Oh, you don't track me moving around the room? What's that? The only time she spoke is when I said, "Quentin's coming by." And she said, "Oh, Quentin," and went right back in. I decided I needed to talk to the doctor because everybody was saying, well, her vitals are fine. Her vitals are fine. And I keep saying, something's different. Something's different. Please, can we test her again? And finally, they got tired of me saying something. And they gave her another CAT scan and realized she had had successive brain bleeds. And for all intents and purposes, my mother no longer existed, though her physical body was still there. And I had to make the decision to have her moved to hospice care. The neurologist agreed with me that, yes, she's not there anymore. And again, I thought, what do I do with this? And so I continued to sing. I sang when they turned off the feeding tube, because for her, that was turning off life support. That was all that was keeping her alive, was the feeding. I sang through that. I sang while the priest came and gave her the sacrament of the sick, last rites for those who are Catholic. When they finally came in the ambulance to take her to hospice, I sang again, and I sang through it all. And I didn't care who heard me sing, because that's all I knew to do, and that's what was keeping me alive through this time. That's what was helping me be there for my mother through this time. I learned through that experience that it is possible to have peace. And I think when we think of peace, we automatically think that everything that is challenging is going to go away. That all of a sudden, we're going to feel happy and joyful again. And I don't think that's always the nature of peace. I think we can be peaceful in any circumstances when we decide, when we remember the foundation of life. Because in that singing, I rediscovered that Spirit was there. The all good was present during this time. And that even though this was a hard road to walk, I was okay. And I was going to make it through this period. And that whatever came down the road, I would handle it. Didn't mean I didn't cry. There was a lot of crying. It didn't mean there weren't moments when I wanted something to be different, but had to work to stay in the now because all I had was what was going on. That there can be peace there too. There can be peace there too, in the midst of something you wish you never had to deal with. I love the stories about Jesus because Jesus always, in situations when he had a prayer, when there was something to change, he would lift his eyes and he would affirm his oneness with the Father. Because he knew through that everything was possible. He went into higher consciousness and affirmed his oneness. And that's when the miracles happened. I believe my question in the car that morning when I was driving to the medical center, that was me asking higher consciousness, what now? What do I co-create with Spirit to create peace through this time? And Spirit answered, sing. Sing. And I did find peace in every lyric that I sang. I found peace in the midst of my tears. I found peace even as I watched my mother become someone I could not recognize. I found peace as she spent her last 2 weeks in hospice before she took her last breath. And again, I'm not saying that it became easy. It didn't change the situation. But I had a knowingness through the experience that I am held and I am in the midst of the divine. And therein lies my peace. Therein lies my peace. Life is going to hit us some days, and it's going to hit us hard. Some of you may be there right now, dealing with something. And if it's not here now, there may be something coming down the path, and we don't know when or how. And there are going to be moments when we wish something else was happening because what we're in feels untenable. We're going to feel like we don't have what it takes to move through it, to deal with it, to handle it, to stay in the now with it, to stay in the now. And all we really have to do is open up, as Jesus did, and go into higher consciousness. What now? What now? What now? And listen for the answer, and heed what we hear. For many years I heard, but didn't heed. Because like I said, usually what you'll hear every time I heard something, it wasn't rational. Again, if it were rational, I probably could have figured it out. But the answer, I believe, that gets us the closest to peace, that gets us in the midst of peace when the going is tough, is probably not going to make rational sense, but it is the perfect answer for where you are in the moment. The perfect answer for where you are in the moment. The perfect answer. The absolute perfect answer. Peace is possible. Peace is always possible. And now that experience has taught me that peace is absolutely possible in all circumstances. Every last one. Every circumstance with all people, no matter what your relationship is, no matter how far down in the ditch it's gone, peace is possible. And that's, I think, what we want to know. I think that's the ultimate security, knowing that peace is possible. Because I know you have moments like I did where you say, man, all I want is peace. Even if just for a moment, I just want to catch my breath. I want to feel like I'm not going to get crushed under the weight of whatever it is I'm shouldering. I just want some peace. And so I say yes. And I think if we'll just be willing to ask, what now? What now? What now? I believe that this inner GPS in us, divine intelligence, divine wisdom, is always leading us to that peace if we'll just listen and we'll heed. Got to get quiet. Got to get quiet. And that's why one of the tenets, one of the principles of unity is prayer meditation. You got to get quiet. And the more often you get quiet, the more easily you will recognize the voice when you hear it, the voice. And you'll know automatically that yes, that's the perfect solution. Yes, this is what I will do. And you will follow it and move boldly forward towards peace. Boldly forward towards peace. In all circumstances. Just that knowledge for me gives me peace every day, because I do know that whatever comes down my path, I've got what I need to handle it. Whatever it is right here inside me. And divine wisdom is taking me there. In fact, divine wisdom is probably aware of what's coming way before I am. And I'm being prepared for peace in that moment. And so it's incumbent upon me to listen every day. Every day. I know you don't think you have time. I know you think you got something better to do than to sit and be in the silence. I tell myself that still from time to time. But if we listen, the answer comes. And we will indeed be led to peace, even amidst life's weeds. Namaste.